Putrajaya will be cutting its official GDP forecast of between 6% and 7.5% this year due to the impact of the current full movement control order. Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Abdul Aziz said during a briefing with the media today, the new official numbers along with deficit figures will be announced in mid-August in conjunction with the release of data on Malaysia's economic growth for the second quarter of 2021. He said the Pemulih stimulus package is expected to give at least a 2% uplift to the country's GDP. On the sources of funds to cover the government's 10 billion ringgit fiscal injection under the relief package, Zafrul said some will come from an increase in borrowings. Asked if Putrajaya will need to increase its statutory debt ceiling, he said the matter will be studied based on the new GDP forecast, although he sees no current need to raise the limit. As for the EPF's iCitra withdrawal facility, the minister believes it should not affect the liquidity of the capital markets, as the quantum involved is manageable. On the 6-month loan moratorium announced yesterday, he said it will not be interest-free, though banks will waive the compounded interest and penalty charges incurred during this period. While the lenders will be affected, he gave his assurance that the sector will be able to take the hit. CGS CIMB economists Michelle Chia and Lim Yi Peng believe Pemulih will only temporarily stabilise the economy. They wrote in a note that the measures will mitigate the snowball effect of the extended Phase 1 lockdown until the end of 2021. But a clear roadmap to recovery remains lacking, placing a ceiling on next year's economic revival. The analysts retained their GDP growth forecasts at 4.4% for 2021 and 4.7% for 2022 and expect the budget deficit to remain below 7% of GDP this year. Meanwhile, Khazanah Investment Bank says this year's budget deficit is likely to widen to its largest ever quantum following the announcement of the 150 billion ringgit package. Khazanah analyst Koh Sun Huat wrote in a note today that with just 10 billion ringgit to be directly funded by the federal government's budget, the deficit figure is expected to hit 105 billion ringgit this year. That's 6.9% of Malaysia's GDP versus 6.3% previously. According to Koh, there is a fair chance of the 60% statutory debt to GDP limit being breached. The research house retained its 2021 GDP forecast at 5% to 6%. It also lowered its end 2021 target for the FBM KLCI to 1,575 from 1,710 previously to take into account the heightened macro risks in terms of Malaysia's fiscal position and downside bias to banks' earnings due to the loan moratorium announced under Pemulih. Former Petronas chieftain Tan Sri Zulkiflee Ariffin will be chairing Gas Malaysia starting July 1st. In a filing with Bursa Malaysia, the utility company said he will be succeeding Datuk Hasni Harun, who is resigning tomorrow to pursue other commitments. Hasni has served as Gas Malaysia's non-independent, non-executive chairman since May 2013. Zulkiflee is currently the non-executive group chairman of Malaysia Aviation Group and Malaysia Airlines, and also chairman of DRB Highcom. The engineer by profession led Petronas as president and group CEO from April 2015 until June 2020. He was also briefly on the board of ExxonMobil. Khazanah National has appointed outgoing Maybank CFO Dato' Amirul Faisal Wan Zahir as its MD, effective July 16th. In a statement, the Sovereign Wealth Fund said Amirul Faisal will be taking over from Dato' Shahril Ridzuan, who will be departing to pursue his personal interests upon the expiry of his contract with Khazanah. The announcement confirms the Edge's report last week. Khazanah welcomed Amirul Faisal to its board and expressed confidence that with his expertise and experience, it will be able to progress further in delivering on its mandate. Amirul Faisal joined Maybank as its group head of global banking in 2014, before he was made CFO in 2016. He was previously Group MD of Chemical Company of Malaysia from 2011 to 2014, after serving as Executive Vice President in charge of special projects at PNB for a year. He was MD and Head of Investment Banking at Maybank Investment Bank from 2008 to 2010. Sapura Energy posted a net loss of 97.07 million ringgit for the first quarter of FY22, against a net profit of 14.21 million ringgit a year earlier, dragged by the unfavourable effect of the US dollar exchange rate and lower share of profit from associates and joint ventures. Revenue, however, rose 8.4% to 1.47 billion ringgit, underpinned by higher income from the engineering and construction and drilling business segments. It said in a bourse filing this was in line with the progress of projects being executed and higher average day rates. On a quarter-on-quarter basis, net loss narrowed from 216.03 million ringgit, while revenue grew 1.9% from 1.44 billion ringgit. Sapura Energy CEO Datuk Muhammad Anwar Taib said the group has secured about 95% of its targeted revenue for FY22. He is confident that it will exceed the revenue posted in FY21. As at the end of the first quarter of FY22, its order book stood at 11.8 billion ringgit. Its total bids and prospects are currently valued at 147 billion ringgit, with 51 billion ringgit worth of tenders already submitted or in progress. These include 6 active bids in the renewables sector across Asia Pacific. Sapura Energy's share price closed unchanged at 13 cents today, valuing the group at 2.08 billion ringgit.